Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Indie Alaska is an innovative weekly web series capturing the diverse and colorful lifestyle of Alaskans. Real stories of everyday Alaskans at work and play. Supported in part by Alyeska Pipeline Service Company.
The National Weather Service.
Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us for this Sunday's edition of Alaska Weather. Moving on to the map here, the warning advisory map. Got some high wind warnings out here for tonight into tomorrow here for the St. Lawrence Island area, right up to the Seward Peninsula and the Bering Strait, and got winter storm warnings out here for the Kobuk Valley, back across the Noatak Valley again for tonight into tomorrow. Winter weather advisories for the Brooks Range over toward Arctic Village, progressing eastward late tonight, more likely throughout the day tomorrow and into Tuesday. And then this area here, that's for high surf advisories out for the coast, Yukon Delta coast, right up into Norton Sound. And that's out at least probably into tomorrow morning here for the Yukon Delta coast, and that may hang on to the midday tomorrow on up to the northeast. And moving on to the satellite imagery, yesterday you could see just some clouds there over the southeast coast, some clearing off the coast. A lot of sunshine here over south central Alaska, especially east of the mountains there, right down into Kodiak Island, and then a band of moisture moving into the western interior. There, the frontal boundary right in this area. This is the one that came across last evening, really weakened here over the southern portion. Today, the northern part lifting across the Arctic coast, not bringing too much in the way of precipitation with it, but back here to the west, storminess organizing and quite a rather intense storm here over the northwest Bering Sea. You can see rolling right up to the northeast, the front bringing the strong gusty winds into St. Lawrence Island. And this afternoon, gusts over 60 miles per hour through the Bering Strait as the back edge now is up into that area with the stronger low holding back to the west. And the front trails back down across the southwest coast into the Aleutians, and a lot of cold air coming out of the Russian Far East there into the western Bering Sea. But again, nice, mostly sunny skies, Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island, right up again across the Kenai Peninsula and into the Susitna Valley and along the North Gulf Coast. This, the leftover moisture bringing some showers here over the southeast interior on into the northern panhandle. Kind of a break right through here, and then we got some moisture sliding into the southern areas, and that brought a little bit of light rain and clouds there to the southern southeast coast, and then some moisture lifting northeastward across the Arctic coast today. But all the main weather back with this system here with snow, blowing snow, and again the gusty winds, 35 to 50 miles an hour in gusts here up through the northwest interior, back down across the Seward Peninsula and into the Yukon Delta again, with the strongest winds occurring from St. Lawrence Island right up into the Bering Strait. And rolling this along again, you can see the moisture here moving eastward and all the cold air coming out of Russia here sweeping into the Bering Sea. Looks like another wave right in this area here, but there is another system back here over the northern Kamchatka Peninsula area that's going to be dropping southeastward quite rapidly. Actually beginning to show a trough up here, kind of a area of genesis right in that location, and 972 millibar low, quite a tight gradient with this, supporting those 60 to 70 mile an hour wind gusts around the center, especially in advance of the front there. But high pressure, light winds, and cirrus spreading into the eastern interior areas. Here's a low center there associated with the showers and clouds here over the northern panhandle back to the the Wrangell Mountains, with some areas of light snow or snow showers occurring in that area. For tonight, the forecast shows low kind of holding back here, maintaining about the same intensity. So again, the high wind warnings out St. Lawrence Island up to the western the western Seward Peninsula, and the front pushing eastward here, but weakening. The wind's not all that strong, probably looking at gusts 20 to 40 miles an hour in advance of the front, in a narrowing band here as time goes on. High pressure holding over the eastern interior, upper Yukon Valley, looking mostly clear with light winds from the Brooks Range all the way down to Kodiak Island, across south central Alaska. Have this low now kind of lingering off the coast, the upper trough, keeping it kind of showery here over the southeast coast tonight. And the front dragging southward here, rain and snow. Roughly in this area, more likely south of the warm front, it'll be rain in advance of the cold front there, and then beginning to change back over to snow as some of this colder air coming in from the southwest pushes in. But look for showery conditions and breezy across the Aleutians, and snow showers should push back in toward the Pribilofs later tonight. And tomorrow, another low roughly in about this position here, actually the original low center, kind of hard to pick out which one it is there, but we've got one swinging into Bristol Bay, another one breaks off and moves to the western Arctic coast. And the leftover moisture area with the frontal boundary, rain and snow here over the southwest interior, mostly snow up over the northwest part of the state. Another mostly sunny day over the eastern interior, and that'll extend down into the northern panhandle, and gusty northwest winds here with colder temperatures spreading down to the east central Aleutian areas, especially behind this cold front as it moves across the Alaska Peninsula during the day. And some rain beginning to increase again over the southern southeast coast, showers over the central areas, and then kind of a fair and dry day over the northern panhandle, much of the Gulf of Alaska and coastal areas. For Tuesday, this whole system slides southeastward following the upper level trough with it there. So kind of a mixture of precipitation for Kodiak Island. Southeast winds 25 knots, the way it looks at this point in time ahead of that frontal boundary, with rain, colder temperatures, mixed precipitation over the Aleutian Range, and then mostly snow, strong northwest winds, much colder air coming into the Alaska Peninsula here and the eastern Aleutians. Back up over the Pribilofs, probably holding on to the gale force winds there at least into early Tuesday. Winds dropping back, more of the small craft advisory type here from the north through the St. Lawrence Island area and through the Bering Strait. Still a lot of snow showers occurring over mostly the western interior. This is the upper level trough axis right in about that position there. So you have northwest flow aloft and the colder temperatures, more of a south or southeast direction out ahead of the trough there. So kind of a southeast wind flow in this area. Some moisture may find its way up to the southern Kenai Peninsula, maybe over toward Resurrection Bay, but high pressure aloft is going to keep it mostly fair and dry over the eastern interior, right down into the North Gulf Coast and maybe the northern panhandle as well, with all the rainfall now confined to the southern areas. Temperatures this afternoon mostly in the 40s and 50s there over the southeast coast, and 40s to the Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, upper 20s to mid to upper 30s to 40s here along the North Gulf Coast. Cooler up to the north with 20s to lower to mid 30s here over the interior, warmest again in the west, and coldest up along the Arctic coast. Out in the Aleutians, mostly in the lower to mid 40s with about 40 here, 40s for Kodiak Island and 30s up towards St. Lawrence Island. For the lows tonight, with the clear skies under high pressure, light winds, temperatures dropping below zero in some areas, otherwise 0 to 10 above, and warmest out to the west there, staying above freezing for St. Lawrence Island down to the Pribilofs and along the coast. Mid to upper 30s here for the Panhandle and teens for the Arctic coast. And the highs tomorrow, again showing the contrast from southwest to northeast here, with highs just in the teens up over the upper Yukon Valley areas, and mid 30s though back across St. Lawrence Island up into the Bering Strait, 20s for the Arctic coast, and ranging from 40 over the northern southeast coast to 48 around Klawock and Heidelberg. Out in the Aleutians, not much change. Highs again in the mid-40s. Flying weather with that front coming in. Look for an area of IFR along in advance of the front here, extending from the Kobuk Valley and right on down to the south across the western Bristol Bay area and Alaska Peninsula. Then right behind the front a break, and then areas IFR following in behind, especially out here over the south central Bering Sea into the Aleutians. Look for VFR conditions from the Arctic coast here, eastern Arctic coast, all the way through the central and eastern interior into the Gulf of Alaska, and marginal VFR with possible IFR, but that'll stay mostly over Dixon Entrance. And for passes, Anatuvik, VFR possibly becoming marginal late in the day on the southern entrance. And for Anatuvik, or Adigan, about the same VFR, but look for conditions to deteriorate to marginal, possibly here on the southern entrance. Be a little sooner for Anatuvik and a little later for Adigan, but that'll mostly be on those southern approaches. Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR, possibly becoming marginal on the eastern entrances here with some moisture spreading from south to north. And rainy, keep it VFR probably the entire day. Windy, looking good VFR. Isabel, VFR. Antasta, VFR. And Tanita, same forecast, VFR conditions reported as well. Chilkoot and White, there will be some clouds, maybe a few lingering showers, but they'll be of the VFR variety. And the freezing levels here, cold front coming southward tonight, so you can see the 2,000-foot isotherm there, well south of the Aleutians, especially here over the eastern areas, and the surface coming down near the Pribilofs there and then cutting back along the North Gulf Coast, and about 2,000 to 4,000 feet over the Panhandle back toward Kodiak Island. And icing threats, the main frontal boundary, this will be moving slowly from west to east tomorrow, mostly below about 11,000 feet through this area. And then some of this will be trying to work up into the southern southeast coast, and then some more icing threats, but of a in the colder air, it'll be a little shallower, below 5,000 to 7,000 feet there over the Bering Sea down into the Aleutians. And high pressure aloft here coming across the interior slowly, but this will actually linger into Tuesday with the trough here and another one back there kind of swinging southeastward. And by Tuesday, it'll be mostly south and southwest of Kodiak Island. But tomorrow, though, we have one branch well to the south and then a weaker branch here, southerlies, 50 to 70 knots over the western interior with that trough holding back over the Russian Far East. And at 9,000 feet, low pressure roughly in about this position, so pretty strong winds around that. Again, the high wind warnings in the area there, St. Lawrence Island and the Seward Peninsula on the western end. Good northwest flow behind it, 30 to 50 knots across the Bering into the Aleutians, and a high pressure ridge right through here, light variable winds in that area. Not much different over the Panhandle, but this low down here west of the Queen Charlotte's, southeast about 25, 9,000 feet. And then more of a east-northeasterly direction coming down to 3,000 feet, 10 to 15 knots, but quite an increase here across the Queen Charlotte's, 45 knots there. And then the southerlies, 35 to 45 knots coming into the southwest interior. Strongest around that low center still tomorrow, 3,000 feet, about 50 knots all the way around there. And then lighter up along the Arctic coast. Turbulence should look something like this. The best chance of any severe, of course, is going to be back out here over the Bering Strait down to St. Lawrence Island. Moderate chop there along in advance of the front with a gradient, an associated gradient. And then the northwest winds right through this area. Occasional moderate chop all below the 5,000 to 9,000 foot range. And it looks like it'll stay pretty smooth over the Panhandle with Dixon Entrance southward getting a little more bumpy. And after the break, I'll be back with a look at the marine forecasts.
Good evening. I'm Harry Keeling, and on behalf of the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation and Alaska Public Media, welcome to Hangar Flying. This evening, our guest is Jeff Oshinsky. Jeff has had a distinguished career in federal service for 27 years, with 17 years in Alaska. In the early 90s, he was the manager at the ARTCC, later managed at the Alaska Aviation Weather Unit, and the Anchorage Volcano Advisory Center. He's now the Deputy Chief for Environmental and Scientific Services Division. In short, the Regional Weatherman. Jeff, welcome to Hanger Flying.
Oh, great. Thanks. It's great to be here, Harry.
Oh, welcome back. You've been on the program before.
Thanks, yes.
Obviously, weather forecasting is extremely important to pilots and operators and people involved in aviation. And you, the National Weather Service, has got a big operation up here in Alaska. I think latest numbers I saw were 240 people and 19 stations. It's a big effort. And I got to tell you, I appreciate what you guys do. You've got a tough challenge, and it makes doing the professional job that you do contributes significantly to aviation safety. So thanks very much. Let's talk a little bit about one initiative that you and I had talked about with future potential. Describe some of the modernization efforts.
Well, Harry, we're in the process now of modernizing our aviation services in Alaska. And what that means is basically going from an old way of doing business, of typing up forecasts and creating graphics by hand, essentially, to going to this digital database. And what this means, it will allow us to be able to derive a whole variety of products, basically whatever the users really want, from this digital database. And the beauty of that is all our offices in Alaska will be tied to this database. So whether you're a pilot or a mariner or whatever forecast you happen to look at, it's all being pulled from the same database and will be consistent.
So give me an idea, give our viewers an idea what a new product might look like. What exactly will it do that we can't have done now?
Well, I think the biggest change that we're going to see is we're going to see probably better resolution in the product. So in other words, we have the standard products like the MVFR, IFR flying charts and turbulence and icing. I think what we'll be able to see in the future is we'll be able to see more resolution and granularity in the forecasts. So we'll be able to forecast more distinct layers of icing and turbulence, and we'll also be able to put these products out on a more frequent basis.
Now, one of the things you mentioned to me, if I got it right, I think is very futuristic. And let's see if I can describe it right. So right now, if I'm coming back into Anchorage, I can get a terminal forecast for Anchorage, or I can get a terminal forecast for Elmendorf. But I think you're talking about maybe someday in the future, dirt strip XYZ with, you can give me an idea what the weather's going to be there.
I think so. It's pretty exciting with this digital database. Part of the initiative is to improve our computer modeling. And of course, the computer modeling sort of drives how well we can produce forecasts. And as we get better and more specific models for Alaska that show the differences geographically, we'll be able to push that into this process. And so I think, this may be a few years out, but I think we'll be at a point sometime where a pilot can take his, we'll say his cursor of his mouse on his computer and move it to any location in the state and click on that spot that he's interested in, he or she is interested in, and get a forecast that'll have aviation weather parameters for that site.
Wow.
I really do think that we'll get there in a few years.
That's huge. I mean, when you add that to the introduction of weather cams, it's really going to make an impact.
It's going to open the doors. We keep saying that this is a major paradigm shift in aviation forecasts, and the really exciting part for us here in Alaska is we're on the cutting edge. We're sort of the pathfinder for these digital aviation services. Nobody else is doing this in the country, and all eyes are focused on us up here in Alaska.
I'm going to ask this last question about forecasting. Is it science, black magic, or luck, or all three?
Well, it's funny that you say that, because I saw a cartoon repeatedly throughout my career that said meteorology is 60% science and 40% art. And I've seen the numbers flipped around, 60% art, 40% science. And so the big joke is that it's sort of a combination of all those things. When you talk to forecasters, they often talk about having a gut feeling. We're trained to understand patterns, and weather patterns dictate certain weather conditions. So many of us can look at a weather map and look at a pattern and say, I don't think they're going to get the rain in Anchorage. I think it's going to be a turbulence event on the Chugach or whatever, just based on the weather pattern. And a small change in that pattern can totally change the weather for a given location.
Wow. Well, all kidding aside, I appreciate what you do and your fellow forecasters and the whole weather business. And I think you've saved a lot of people and prevented a lot of accidents. So thanks very much for your efforts.
Oh yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks for being on the program.
Thanks a lot, Harry.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed tonight's program. And again, I want to remind you, November 15th, we're going to have our fall safety seminar. That's Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation, November 15th. More details to follow. Until next time, fly safe.
Welcome back. Well, it was on Friday we realized that the expanding ice from the shore here linked up with the expanding ice from the north and closed it off here right around the central Arctic coast, and then areas of that drifting southwest, as well as forming here in the western coastal areas. So a narrow band now of sea ice-free waters just off the coast there on the east side, and then still a lot of open area out here, even back up northwest of Wrangel Island. And moving on to the marine forecast, northerlies 20 to 25 knots, Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay, possibly right down into the central waters here, mostly light northeasterlies 10 to 15 along the coast, and southeast 15 knots for the southern inside waters. Then for Tuesday, looking at a northeast flow here on the light side, 10 to 15 knots along the coast, maybe swinging around to more of an easterly direction there west of Prince of Wales Island, and northeast 15 over the inside waters. 25 knot winds here possible in areas over the central part of the inside waters, as well as more northerly for Lynn Canal and Glacier Bay, 25 knots and higher gusts. Then for the Prince William Sound tomorrow, northeast at 10. Light variable winds for northern Cook Inlet, 5 to 10 knots, northeast 15 for the southern inlet. Southeast flow here, 15 to 20 knots across the Barren Islands, Augustine Island, and not too bad there for Kodiak Island. Light variable winds from the North Gulf Coast, light northeasterlies for Bristol Bay. Look for small craft advisories develop here along the east side of Kodiak Island. Northeast 20 knots for Shelikof Strait, extending up into the Kamishak Bay area. The Barren Islands out in this area, or for the western North Gulf Coast, easterlies at about 10 to 15, staying light and variable here for the eastern Gulf Coast, and no change for Prince William Sound or northern Cook Inlet. Excuse me, southwest 25 for Bristol Bay, more of a westerly direction on down the coastline there, but small craft advisories west 30 knots, taking a turn to the northeast there at about 25. And for Tuesday, lighter winds here for Bristol Bay, northeast at about 15. Small craft advisories, Sitkinak over to about Chignik, and this area, gales though, northwesterlies, 35 knots, probably looking at much higher gusts here, possibly 45 to 50 knots out of the northern bays there on the south side of the peninsula. Then for the Aleutians, tomorrow westerlies 30 to 35 knots, probably dropping off lower than that here on the west end, more likely down to 20 by this time tomorrow, with the gales now coming eastward slowly, northwest 35, higher gusts, and that should begin to overspread the eastern Aleutians as well. And then those will hold through most of Tuesday, beginning to drop back, possibly down to small craft advisories, Nikolsky westward, then really dropping off as the ridge swings through the central Aleutians, and then picking back up here as the gradient increases ahead of the next front out over the, well, actually west of the Komodorskis. For the Bering Sea, west 30 knots for the Pribilofs, and southwest 25 to 30 knots here along the southwest coast. Southerlies at 30 knots there for St. Lawrence Island. Northwest 40 here behind that front, or the next system when it finally swings southeastward. Pretty good northwest winds coming into the northwest Bering Sea. Westerlies at about 30 for the Pribilofs. Then those will pick up to gale force probably tomorrow night here for the Pribilofs and hold through Tuesday. dropping back to about 30 knots Tuesday afternoon for the northern Bering Sea. Northerlies 25, St. Lawrence Island. Again, heavy freezing spray both tomorrow and Tuesday for that area. And dropping off as you head south here down to 15 knots south into Nunivak Island. Up along the Arctic coast, we've got southerlies or southeasterlies at about 20 on the east side, south 15 for the central coast, and then about 20 knots from the south here, Kotzebue Sound on up to the western Arctic coast. And then those kind of, or they swing around to the north and then increase here with the small craft advisories there on the western end, right down into the Bering Strait with northerly winds, but staying quite light here. North 15, lighter, especially northeast of Point Lay there, northeast of the central coast, and very light easterlies there for the eastern stretch of the coastline. For tonight, big storm out here pushing a front slowly eastward with the winds out ahead of the front gradually diminishing as it pushes inland, but staying quite strong. High wind warnings out for tonight and into tomorrow, St. Lawrence Island and the Bering Strait, with that tight pressure field associated with the low center. Much lighter winds, high pressure. Areas dropping below zero tonight here over the eastern interior, and pretty fair conditions all the way down to Kodiak Island. Scattered showers as an upper trough swings through the southeast coast. We'll see for Monday. This thing kind of splits up. One center heading up the coast there on the Arctic coast, this one swinging down, and another one back, holding back to the west. But the whole upper level trough is going to swing south of Kodiak Island Monday night and Tuesday, which supports the surface low in about this position for Tuesday, with strong and colder air coming southward over the Aleutians. And that's a look at the weather. Thanks for joining us.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.